THC ratio. And so in consuming the resin that you're talking about, in one intake, do you feel like, how many milligrams of THC do you feel like you might be getting from that?
Ooh, I don't know. That's strong
just like
stuff,
range,
yeah,
ballpark, maybe like 40 to 50 milligrams?
I really don't know. Like, I want to say it's probably an 80% THC product.
Right.
Because it's so clear, and it's BHO, so probably even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, really could be 50 milligrams, I'm sure. And but in an edible form, I'd be no stranger to that either.
Yeah, and I think there's like, everybody has a very different tolerance or ability or experience with cannabis. So I think it's really interesting to like point out these massive differences between you and I, because that for me, like, would just, I get some anxiety even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Though I would love to try the product in like a micro dose and maybe get 5 milligrams if possible.
And that's what they say, the difference between a medicine and a poison is dosage, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that's the product that would push you over the edge, but just its potency.
For me, it's always been in my life, the difference between a positive and a negative experience with cannabis has been in the quantity. And so in this sublingual spray or oil drops that I might use before a workout, often before I go running, when I do 1 or 2 sprays, so I usually would do maybe between 2 and 4 sprays, depending on the time of day of this run. If it's in the morning, I'd probably have 1 or 2. If it's in the evening, I would have more, because even in a 25 to 1 CBD to THC sublingual spray, where one spray might get me 5 milligrams of CBD and maybe 0.5 milligrams of THC, I might even still feel that THC.
Wow.
Yeah, and not in a bad way. Like, when I feel that really small amount of THC, it's usually I've forgotten that I've consumed it. Mm-hmm. And it'll be maybe 30 minutes, an hour later as a sublingual, or even earlier, I would sort of have this sort of like creative or interesting thought, or just feel a little bit lighter, and then in that moment remember that there was some THC in something that I consumed. Right. And I have even felt that from just CBD alone. Yeah, for sure. So there, I think that's where the tolerance and the consumption amount is so different. Yeah. And I would say the other way I often consume cannabis pre-workout, so if we just talk about our pre-workout consumption, would be before I go for a run or even go into a boot camp, I would put a cannabis topical on my hips, knees and ankles. Especially when running, I'll apply a cannabis topical to my knees. If I don't do that and then I go road running, I prefer to trail run, but sometimes I'm almost urban forced to road run. If I'll get really sore knees and hip. I mean, that's some body alignment that I'm working through, where that pain is coming from, but that makes a massive difference for me on a run. Do you ever use topicals before, or is that maybe a pre?
Sometimes, if I've got a particular injury that I'm dealing with, and I need to still train on it or still use that muscle or joint, for pre, I really like the ones that are tingly or warming and stuff like that.
So I usually have some added menthol or eucalyptus.
Yeah, that stuff. So I haven't used topicals in a little while, but there was a really great product out of green therapies, I think, out of Vernon, and they had like an icy hot that I really enjoyed. I'm not caught up with all the different topicals on the market right now, whether that be the gray space or who knows what's available in the legal space, but I need to get back into what's on the market there and try some stuff out.
I mean, I think there's an opportunity to learn how to make our own topicals as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's sort of an interesting market that's popping up. I have some topical products from the unregulated market in Canada, so I'm looking forward to what we see over the next year as far as legal cannabis topicals. Yeah, so
I was just down in Seattle and saw some really neat topical products down there.
Yeah, there's been a few times where the main cannabis topical that I have is a salve, and I also really like a balm that I have that I usually can rub it in like a massage into my thighs and my lower back. But I use that, so pre-workout I'll put that on my joints and hips. Post-workout I'll apply that to my hamstrings, my quads, maybe my butt.
Nice, yeah.
And there's been a few times where I was much less sore the next day.
Yeah.
And it was probably in combination with a topical and also microdose of an edible. So I think that sort of leads into what would be one of the main ways that you use cannabis post-workout?
Post-workout? My athletic colleagues may very much disapprove, but I like to smoke a joint.
Yeah.
That's just my favorite. I like it. However, in recent weeks, I have been trying to cut down my smoking significantly, unless I can get something really nice, some organically grown product where I know where it came from. I'm not smoking joints anymore, but classically that's been what I do, just because I've got a few rolled up in the car, and I've got on the way there I've got the coffee in one hand and the vape pen in the other. Then on the way home it's the protein shake in one hand and the big joint in the other. And yeah, I seem to get a much more full effect from flower. I'm gonna shop for a flower vaporizer now. So post-workout, for more of a full body, full spectrum feel, I very much enjoy flower. I've got all sorts of great concentrates that I've got access to, but when I really want to relax and feel it in my body, they just aren't the same. So I like some high potency flower. I think I always like having CBD in my system, whether there's some CBD in the pre-workout or the post-workout is kind of irrelevant. I'm just kind of pro CBD always, but post-training, I really like a high dose of THC. As someone with Crohn's disease, I already struggle with appetite significantly, so one of my biggest challenges with training is actually eating enough to support the training. For me, the training is the easy part, and then I just want to go and do stuff and run around all day and not sit down and eat. So that's where cannabis comes in. It slows me down. It helps shift my tone a little bit, so I'm calmer, I'm more grounded, and quite often forgetful in a good way, where I'm not so focused on all the things I need to get done or the things I'm not getting done. And I'll smoke a joint on the way home. I do like getting a edible in my system as quickly as I can. Just because great opportunity to have it on an empty stomach after training, and it'll kick in. The edibles seem to really help my appetite, so the joint's kind of just something quick to help cool me down from the workout. And then an edible, that's where I'll go for something maybe a little bit sweeter. There were some really nice sodas down in Seattle that I noticed, and not sodas, but infused sparkling waters and things like that. So, you're thirsty after training, knock that back. It was great. So, yeah, and, post-training, a little bit of sugar's okay. So that's not a bad chance for some, whether it's a cookie or chocolate. I make some healthy raw chocolates, and that's kind of what I like.
Do you feel like a drink kicks in a lot faster than an eaten edible? Because that's been my experience. Yes. What would be your dosage, like how much milligrams would you want to consume in a drink if it was right after a workout? Because for me, I'm really careful with edibles, both the quantity but also what time of the day I'm consuming them. I very rarely consume an edible before more than I'll only do it within maybe 2 hours of bedtime.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for me, well, the sodas, all their products are capped at 100 milligrams, but just for everyone's reference, as a medical patient, I do consume 500 to 600 milligrams before bed every night. So 100 milligram soda was no big deal. I certainly felt it, but that was a nice dose for me. If I were making my own edibles, I'd probably immediately post-training reach for 50 to 100 milligrams. Over 200 is where I am getting impaired, for sure. Now, for someone, a rookie, if it was for the purpose of sedation and you were at home, I would start with 5 to 10. Yeah,
I mean, I think that, again, consumption being so different, it sounds like over the course of a day, would you maybe be consuming in the range of 200, 250 milligrams of THC?
Yep.
That would be normal?
Yep.
Yeah, so like for me, an edible in the evening, My sort of where I try and cap myself is at 5 milligrams. I'm a little bit more sweet point around 2.5. Like I said, I'll even feel like 1 or 1.5.
I love that you keep track of all this. The more people need to do this. Journal, know what you're taking and how it affects you, and then you can go back.
I just love cannabis math. If there's ever been a reason to stay in school, kids, it's to get down your cannabis math. I'm still trying to get quick at like calculating how many milligrams are in oil drops and sublingual sprays. But yeah, so after a workout, you'll turn to a joint usually, or vaping. I do find similarly I'll vaporize cannabis flower. I like vaporizing because I feel like you can taste the flavors of the cannabis strain a lot more. But I do tend to agree that sometimes nothing can replace smoking a joint, smoking the flower. So while I definitely minimize my smoking, I do occasionally get a craving for it, and I feel like it's usually at more of my body is maybe gone a little bit past that point of stress physically or mentally, and it wants sort of like the fastest, most pure form now. And then I can definitely, with these new products on the market, I think the first joint that I smoked on legalization day was an organic blueberry lamb's bread by Whistler Medical.
Oh, beautiful.
And it just was so smooth and it tasted so good. And then I think a little bit later I smoked a joint that was $4.20 and I could taste the difference.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, as far as recovering after a workout, I think vaporizing for me for relaxation in the evening. But for recovery, an edible is really, or tincture in the evening is really for me the best way to really feel my full body recovery the next day. Like if I consume when I get to that sweet spot with my edibles, I can actually feel it buzzing through my body. Have you ever experienced that? We can actually feel the THC buzzing throughout your body?
Yeah, for sure. I would say a lot less so now that I have such a high tolerance after years of a medical user, but I am familiar with that phenomena or that feeling for sure.
And wrapping this up soon, what would be your suggestion for anyone thinking of incorporating cannabis in their fitness routine for the first time?
The biggest thing, I think the first thing people tell you is go low and go slow, and that would be my number 2 advice. But my first advice is know what you're taking and write it down. You can't, you can have too much and you can have an uncomfortable experience, but if you're not tracking where it came from, what it is, and what's in it, you're not going to have much success in figuring out where to go from there. So be really judicious about how you choose your cannabis. Ask questions like who grew it, how was it grown, and make sure it's clearly labeled with what's in it, and then journal. Beyond that, low potency stuff, like I would absolutely keep things under 5 milligrams if you're a never ever, and that's more likely 2.5 milligrams or less if you've never consumed before. And I would also highly encourage looking for CBD products. They don't need to be entirely CBD dominant, but 1-to-1s, 3-to-1s, things like that may give you a bit more of a gentle experience while still getting to kind of shake hands with the THC. And other than journaling, it's really just see what works for you. Try it. And one other thing I really want to drill into people is don't give up if it doesn't work out the first time, or if you don't have the results you were hoping for, try something else or try a different product. If it was an inhaled product, maybe try an edible or vice versa. I really do believe there's something out there for everyone if you just put in the time to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, definitely great tips, and I definitely agree on the CBD. I think it's a great introductory product, especially for anyone who hasn't really consumed cannabis much before other than maybe smoking a joint or a bong. CBD is a great way to introduce cannabis into a fitness routine. So, Lane, thanks so much for chatting cannabis and fitness with me today. Maybe we can finish up by how can someone learn more about what you're doing specifically? You do actually train and coach people as well, and help and teach a few different things in the cannabis space. How can people reach out and get in touch with you?
Well, I am terrible at marketing myself. So right now, however, I am very current on Instagram. I try to post daily. So if you find me at lane.britnell, that's just LANE.BRITNEL,